Hello, this is Ashley McHugh from Insurance Newsnet, and I will be the administrator for today's webinar, DEI Success, from Making a Great Hire to Serving a Wider Audience. Moderating the webinar is Susan Roop, Managing Editor at Insurance Newsnet. Susan has been with INN since 2012, following 13 years with NAIFA, Pennsylvania, as well as a number of years as a newspaper reporter and editor. She will be speaking with two people who have been advocates for improving diversity, equity, and inclusion in the financial services world. Toni Gonzales is Vice President of Ohio National and is also Vice President of Women in Insurance and Financial Services. Kristen Hall Eskew is the Vice President of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging at One Digital. Please ask any questions that you may have in the questions pane during our discussion, and we will get to as many as we can at the end. And with that, I'll turn it over to Susan.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. The financial services industry has made progress in attracting a diverse field force, as well as in serving a diverse population. What has worked and what are the next steps? Our panelists today will provide their unique insights. Toni Gonzales is Vice President at Ohio National and is Vice President of Women in Insurance and Financial Services. She is a DEI advocate and speaks on diversity issues to many industry groups. Kristen Hall Eskew is Vice President of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging at One Digital. Kristen believes that there is more to DEI than DE and I. There's also a B, and that stands for belonging. And with that, I'd like to welcome Toni and Kristen. Hello, Toni.
Good morning. Greetings from Arizona.
And hello, Kristen.
Hello, hello. Thank you for having me.
Before we go any further, I would like to take a brief audience poll, and here's the question. What do you see as the biggest DEI issue in the industry? Is it not attracting enough diverse people or not reaching enough diverse consumers? And while you're answering that, we're going to get right into our discussion. I'm going to ask each of you, which would you say is the single biggest challenge in attracting and retaining a more diverse advisor force? And Toni, let's start with you.
Well, at WIFS, our mission is to attract, develop, and advance women in our profession. And to start with the attract part, it's just letting people know the power of the profession. This is a profession not unlike being in law or being in the medical community, where you make a real difference in people's lives and you can carry yourself forward into it, whatever direction you want. So one of the biggest issues we have is letting individuals know that the ability to work directly with consumers and be in the field exists. At WIFS, we have what we call Project 36, and two of our pillars are working with college students and working with career changers to let them know how they could shape their future, make a difference in their lives, but also make a difference in consumers' lives. So I think just letting people know about the industry and having a welcoming environment is the first obstacle.
Yeah.
Okay. Kristen, let's turn to you. What's the main issue in attracting a more diverse advisor force?
Well, I really kind of echo Toni's sentiments. I'll take it a little step further from the seat that I sit in, overseeing DEI and B. I think that we often see this propensity for organizations to jump right into the D, right? The diversity. And that's before we do the hard work of really building trust and connection with these diverse communities. Because as Toni said, there is this sort of lack of accessibility that exists. And so many of these folks don't even know that there is this awesome opportunity here. And so I think we run the risk of checking the box, right? We look different, we're diverse now, but how do we keep these great people? How do we tap into what's important to them, which is often, though not monolithic, I think a common why, as we like to say in our industry, amongst underrepresented people, is the ability to lift as we climb. And so I think we've really got to focus on the back end before we start having these come work with us conversations.
Mm-hmm. Okay, the industry has made progress on a lot of fronts in its DEI efforts. And I was wondering where you see the industry right now in regard to DEI. And Kristen, let's start with you. Where are we right now?
Yeah, so, I knew you would ask this, so I prepared just a little bit. And I saw some stats. So, it's very clear 18% of advisors are women, 5% are Hispanic, 4% Asian American, and I think it's less than 3% are Black. That's where the representation lies. So to me, that says we still have a lot of work to do. I think we are still very much at the beginning stages of being more diverse and inclusive and equitable. And I think we also see this trend, there's this trend of smaller firms or independent houses maybe being all female or all, African-American, Black, whatever it is. And I think that we're all trying to lean in. That's the exciting part, these larger corporations, and figure out, okay, how can we also be a part of the change that we wish to see? How can we tap into the communities that we're all trying to serve? And so that's the good news. But in my opinion, we're still in phase one. What do you think, Toni?
Yeah, I would agree. The intent is there, but the execution and the results are still lagging. So our industry has a long way to go still on building that kind of diversity that our clients want.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Toni, is there anything more you wanted to say on that?
I would just say, when you look at how the industry is trying to become more welcoming, I see, I work for Ohio National, but I partner with several companies that are leading the industry through the WFS Partners for Excellence. And I see them having internal groups. So internal groups where people's shared experiences can come in, they can talk about what they're doing, what they'd like to do. And so there's some progress on there. But where I see where I see a disconnect is oftentimes when I walk into a corporate office, no matter what the company may be, it looks fairly diverse. Depending on the department you're in, you may see a lot of different faces, different backgrounds. But when you go out into the field and you walk into an agency office, you don't necessarily see the same representation. And gender diversity is just one component of diversity, but you may walk in and not see anyone that reminds you of yourself. So in the field, my son joined the industry about a year ago, and I came into a meeting with him. And as I left, the gentleman next to him said, "Well, who's that? I've never seen a woman in one of these meetings before." That should not still be happening. We need more diversity also out in the field, because the field, whether you're an agent, an advisor, a member of the management team, a leader, you are who consumers also see when they first walk into an office. So I think more mentorship and sponsorship is what I'm seeing the industry be interested in, and really to partner with other thought leadership and other companies doing that. Whether it's WIFS or NAFA or FinSECA, that's a resource that we see more individuals and more companies interested in.
Mm-hmm. Toni, that's really a good point about the diversity in the field force as opposed to the diversity in the corporate office, because speaking as a consumer, I don't really see that corporate office makeup, and it's not really relevant to me. But that person who's out there meeting face to face with me as a client, that really means a lot more to me.
Absolutely. It is a great point, Toni, too. And I know that you're aware of this, but I mean, so many studies have been done. I'll speak specifically to the Black community, because I happen to be at the conference for African-American financial professionals, and I've got all this fresh data in my mind. But, we had a speaker talking about how they did this study, and Black women in particular, there's this huge distrust against our industry. They do not believe that, their best intentions are at hand. And I think that there's sort of this historical exclusion behind that, not even one that's up for debate, right? Actual policy that was in place. And when we see people who come from the cultures that we come from, we are more prone to want to do business with them, to feel more comfortable with them. We believe that they will understand the unique barriers and the unique passions that we sort of all have within certain communities. And so I would just add that to that.
That's really interesting, Kristen. And I was wondering, how do we overcome that mistrust?
Time. That's a long answer. And I think hopefully we'll get into some of that. I want to talk about belonging. That's a big piece of this to me. So if it's okay with you, Susan, I might jump into that. I know that's
good. That's something I was going to ask later on, that, there's a B for belonging, but let's talk about how the industry can promote more belonging among the field force.
Sure. I think we saw diversity, equity, and inclusion, now belonging. We've seen this evolution, right? First it was D&I, then it was DEI, now it's DEI and B, the belonging. And I like to say, you know, I think diversity is what organizations and businesses seek, but truly what people are desiring is that sense of true belonging. And so for me, this is where the real work, that trust, that conviction, that community building actually occurs. And so when we talk about belonging, traditionally, you hear it defined as being able to bring your authentic self to work, right? We're talking about these groups of people who walk into offices and don't see themselves being represented. And I'd like to take it a step further and say, to me, belonging is not just, you know, being accepted for who you are. A culture of belonging says, I depend on you to be you. We don't feel right when you show up as anyone other than yourself, the bottom dollar. Nothing is the same. I need you to be you, right? And so I think organizations really have to focus on the 3 C's of DEI and B, excuse me. And I think I may have said them, but I'll say it again. That's conviction, because I believe this work or this journey is hard, very hard. It often requires a patience that isn't easy to have and a grace that isn't easy to give. And I think we have to lean on that conviction to keep us rowing forward when the times get rough. And then community, you know, this takes a village. Absolutely. This takes allyship. Toni already mentioned this. This is something that requires the lived experiences of all of us, not just those that may be affected, at least in the context of what we are talking about today. And I think it just starts with having conversations. How do we know where the inequities lie and what voices are missing from the table if we aren't doing that? You know, at our organization, we are very intentional about these small cohort conversations, and we sort of expand and grow from there. And I think we do see companies having focus groups and employee resource groups, and that's great, but we just have to be intentional about those inequities and really addressing things head on and being a little less performative.
Mm-hmm. Okay, those are great points and something to think about. Toni, you've been a particular advocate for women in the industry, and I was wondering, how has the industry become more welcoming toward women, and what does it still need to do?
Oh, thank you. The industry, when you're looking at, and Kristen was talking about the 3 C's with DEI and belonging, I think one of the issues I see is the intent is there, but I was recently speaking at a Latinas in Leadership meeting, and one of the individuals said, you can't be what you can't see. So first off, it starts to build on itself. Once you start having a more diverse workforce, people start coming in the door. But to do that, you have to open the door and welcome people in the first time. The reason I've been able to join some of the organizations I've been on and boards I've been on is I've had male mentors and sponsors turn around, open that door, pull up another chair to the table and welcome me in. And then I can in turn turn around and open the door and bring more individuals in. And it's not that anyone is looking for less seats at the table, but there's room for so much more. So being welcoming, inviting people to the party is what we say. You know, if you're at a great meeting like Kristen's at in DC right now, bring somebody new along with you. Bring somebody that looks different than you along with you. And that is really key to starting to get that type of exposure. Mentoring is important. And we have companies that want to mentor. WFS is a free mentoring program for all of our members. But advocating, sponsoring, that's equally as important, because unless somebody that looks different than you opens the door, how are you going to get in there? So I talked about the ABCs of sponsorship recently in a blog on Lead Her, and you've got to amplify, boost, and connect other individuals in your organization. And then there's a D also, and that's defend others when they're not in the room, because somebody may have never met Ashley as an example. And if she's not in the room, somebody needs to say, Ashley is phenomenal. She needs to be at the next event like that. So I think those are some of the key things that the industry is trying, but we can do better.
Mm-hmm. Right. Those are really great insights. You know, it's not enough to hire a diverse agency force, but for that diverse agency force to succeed, a company must have the right infrastructure in place to get those employees off to a good start after they're hired. And Kristen, I know this is an area where you have some particular interest and expertise. So can you please explain what companies must do after an employee is hired?
Sure. Toni kind of hit this nail on the head already. You know, I heard someone say recently, there's this though well-intended, oftentimes we see these minority groups being over-mentored and under-sponsored. And so I think it's important to define the difference. You know, a mentor is someone who's going to teach you how to network, you know, help you think big, dream big, but a sponsor is going to give you their network. A sponsor is going to invest in you, and the payout for them is your success, right? It's everything that Toni just said about the ABCs and the D, right? Bringing someone's name up in the room. And so I think we have to be really intentional about those sponsorships. And then again, supporting the why of these folks. It's not, for me, as a triple minority in our industry, right? I'm, female, millennial, woman of color. For me, it's not just, can I be successful? It's, can I turn around and lift up some other folks like me and make sure that they are successful? And what is my organization or whatever organization doing to empower that effort? Where is the social responsibility? It's one thing to say all the right things, to have the diverse faces on the brochures, but unless there is that trust and connection, I cannot, harp on that enough. It really doesn't mean anything. And I think that comes through lived experience. Toni just said, bring somebody who doesn't look like you to these conferences. I brought my white male CEO, co-founder of our company to this conference. There is nothing more powerful than lived experience. And if you have not been the only in the room, you need to go spend some time being the only in the room.
That's great. Let's talk some more about allyship in the industry. And Kristen, I was wondering, how can a company promote allyship among its ranks? And what can all of us do?
Sure. In its simplest form, allyship is kind of similar to sponsorship, but I think allyship is just simply having empathy for how other people live their life that maybe you can't personally identify with, and taking action, right? And so I think we mix up allyship with mentorship, just as we do sponsorship and mentorship. But I think what you really want to do here is have a bold culture, a culture that feels empowered to call in and call out. And I mean, sometimes people say some pretty rogue things that need to be called out in the moment. Sometimes those biases come out a little bit more subtly, and maybe you need to call someone in more privately, whatever the situation calls for. But I think you'd be surprised, not many organizations or folks at organizations feel as though it is psychologically safe to do that. And so I think we have to be intentional about that. I think I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Toni, was there anything you wanted to add to this?
I would just echo what Kristen had just said there.
Okay. All right. So we've talked a lot about getting a more diverse field force. And let's turn now to how the industry can serve a more diverse population. And Toni, I know you've done a great deal of research on how and why the industry needs to serve more women. So can you share some of those insights?
Absolutely. I was blessed enough to be in DC for NAIFA's Diversity Symposium in May, and Darlene Flagg created this great presentation on womanthology. And we talked about the power of the position and how the industry can profit by serving a more diverse clientele. Women are going to control 2/3 of the wealth in America. And professional courtship of women is a little bit different than is no different than personal courtship, where it takes a little bit longer to get that trust and the respect to earn the right to work with the individuals controlling 2/3 of the wealth. But we find that whether it is earning higher degrees, inheriting the wealth because we simply live longer than our fathers, our brothers, our spouses, and we're also starting more small businesses. So the clientele is there, but they'd like to work with somebody that they trust and they respect and maybe has those shared experiences as well. I look at my own career. I started in this industry as a new college grad, then I was a newlywed, then I was a new mom, then a single mom, and now I'm part of a blended family. My needs and what I'm looking for in an individual have evolved through that entire time. Our consumers' needs are evolving as well. So the demand is there, but only 3 out of 10 women have an advisor and 9 out of 10 would like to work with one. So there's a huge opportunity for us to make a difference in a lot of people's lives simply by changing how we approach things and the team of people we surround ourselves with as we approach and work with these clients.
Mm-hmm. Those are great points. Kristen, We've written so many times that there's a diverse population out there that really needs what this industry has to offer, but for whatever reason, they're not being served. So what must the industry do to reach a more diverse population?
You know, Toni is the expert here. I can't really say it much better than she did. And maybe this is not the answer that you seek, but just ask. I can't tell you how many times I've heard an advisor say, you know, I keep asking my minority clients, have you ever worked with a financial professional before? And the answer is, no one's ever asked me. And so I think you just have to ask and understand that there is value and need and necessity there as well.
Okay. You know, we've heard all about the great resignation and the great shuffle, and we've seen a large percentage of the workforce change careers in the last year or so. People are really re-examining what it is that they want to do with their lives, and where's their passion, and how can they serve others and make some money in doing so. So if you're a woman or you're a member of a population that's underrepresented in this industry, why should you or would you consider a career in insurance and financial services? Toni, let's start with you.
Well, this is my 20th plus year in the industry. And what I love about it is I have been able to do everything I wanted to do professionally. And I've also been able to do what I chose to do personally, which is raise 4 kids. So I've had control over my career, over my profession. I've been able to travel. I've been able to work with clients, make a difference in people's lives. I had to speak at events like this, but I've also never missed a soccer game. So it's a job to me that is incredibly fulfilling when I think about the difference that we as a profession make in people's lives, but it's also something that has made a difference in my family's life. And I love that. And I'm very proud of this profession and what we do for people. And I will tell you, I've worked with a lot of advisors, and some of our advisors do come right out of school. They might come out of high school into this profession. They might come out of college, but career changers do really, really well in this as well. It could be someone shifting careers. They want to go from being an employee to owning something, or it could be a matter of someone that stayed at home to take care of a family member, and now they're re-entering. So it is a career where you can make a difference, not only for your clients in your community, but also for yourself and your own goals and dreams.
And now, Kristen, what are your thoughts on this? Why would someone consider a career in this industry?
Well, let me just open by saying we need you. We need your diverse perspective. Your communities need your diverse perspective. And, you know, I think there's this misconception that you have to be a math person, a finance person. I'm a creative. I thought I was going to be an actress. It's the running joke in my family. I'm even in this industry. If you are someone who is passionate for people, maybe you're someone like me who just is all about, you know, social justice and change. You know, this is a way to make an impact before policy, right? This is how you impact the dollar that is spent, and you help to grow and protect these communities. And it's just a beautiful, beautiful place to build your own financial freedom and life, just as Toni has mentioned.
Okay, let's take a minute and look into the future. What still needs to be done to achieve greater DEI in the industry? Kristen, what are your thoughts?
Well, the short answer, I think, goes back to the poll. You know, it's I don't know if it's the chicken or the egg, but we need more diverse producers in order to help more diverse clients. And let me be clear, I'm not saying that you have to be diverse to help a diverse client or vice versa, right? And I just think personally, you know, the business case is there. We all get that. Businesses who are investing in DEI and B are more profitable. They're more, you know, able to attain new clients, more recruitable, all the things, more. We get that. But I don't think it's enough on its own. Conviction. I would like to see more people in our industry be personally affected by this in some kind of way, right? And I'd like to see representation beyond just the field, but at those C-suite levels, right? Those team leader levels, better reflect the people we're trying to hire and the communities that we're trying to serve, because it's important to really, really live this in order for us to be genuine.
Okay. And Toni, what do you believe we still need to do?
And Kristen hit on so much of this, but I think as an industry, we need to not only see more advisors coming in, the attract part, but the develop and the advance part. If you don't have underrepresented groups in your C-suite, in your field management, in roles like I have, where I'm going out as a vice president of sales and working with clients and consumers. If you still only have 1 or 2 individuals on those senior teams and in that management, remember, people can't be what they can't see. It's and part of it's unconscious bias. It's not that there aren't really qualified candidates out there, but individuals tend to stay in a social circle, in a business circle of people that remind them of themselves. So you've really got to be intentional, think outside the box. So I need to bring this to my community. Who are some candidates? And if I don't have someone, I bet I know people that do, that could help connect, who could help collaborate, who could champion somebody else. So everybody has a vested interest. Whether you're a member of an underrepresented group or not, this should be important to you because it's important to our clients.
Okay. I want to thank you both for this really interesting discussion so far. I'm going to go to Ashley here in a minute to see if we have any questions. But before we do, I was wondering if either of you have any closing thoughts. And Toni, I'm going to start with you.
I would just say, first off, thank you for putting this on today. There has never been a better time to rise up and be the change in our industry, which by the way, is the theme for the WFS conference this fall, where Kristen's going to speak. But there's never been a better time to join this profession. And every individual in our profession can make a difference. Every one of us, no matter what our role, we can do something to amplify, boost, connect somebody else, introduce somebody else. If you've got a chapter of WIFS in your community, I would encourage you to attend a meeting. Bring somebody that doesn't look like you to the meeting and form those connections and start talking at a local level. And then with the top part of your company, what can we do to make a difference? And measure it. Take a look. Take a look when you do the company photo at the end of the year. Take a look at what the diversity of that photo says about the team that you've created.
Good point. Kristen, what are some thoughts that you have, things that we didn't go over that you wanted to mention?
I measure it. I think she just dropped the mic on that one. I'll leave it at there. And I just thank you for having me. And I'm excited to speak at the conference this October. There is still time to register. It's going to be a great time. WIFS is amazing. I can't say enough incredible things about them.
All right. Yeah, let's before we go into any questions, let's give Toni and Kristen a chance to plug their upcoming appearances. And Kristen, we'll start with you and let's talk about WIFS.
Well, yeah, I just said it. So I will be speaking there October 1st. I think, well, that's the conference is the 29th through the 1st. It's in Arizona. Great industry leaders. It's going to be a lot of fun. Toni, I'm sure you could even tell more about the conference than I can, being vice president.
I will tell you, it's my favorite conference of the year. I go to so many great ones, but there is a different chemistry and sense of connection that comes out of the conference. The energy level is phenomenal. We have fantastic keynote speakers like Kristen. We have some great breakout sessions, but it's also what happens in between those sessions. And by the way, I do have a discount code that I'm going to offer to anyone that attended this meeting today. We don't have a chat, so I'm not going to put it in the chat, but I'm going to work with Susan and Ashley, and we do have a $100 discount code for anyone that's interested in coming to Phoenix and experiencing that themselves.
Thank you so much, Toni. And before WIFS, you have a speaking gig coming up next week at the NAFA, National Association of Insurance and Financial Advisors Apex Conference next week. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about that. We're going to be covering it for Insurance Newsnet. So I'm really looking forward to going down there and seeing everybody. But tell us what you'll be speaking about.
So I'm super excited. Phoenix is a very popular spot to visit this year. And NAFA Apex next week is going to be at the Arizona Biltmore. They have a fantastic lineup. And on Tuesday, August 16th from 3 to 5, Darlene Flagg, our WIFS president, will be one of the members speaking with me and several of the key NAFA leadership, as well as NAFA trustees that are females, on an accelerated course for advocacy for women. And we also had one for Hispanic advisors. We're actually combining them because we had so many female Hispanic advisors say, wait, I don't want to choose between the two. So it's a free event. If you're going to be in Phoenix or you live in Phoenix, go ahead and go to the NAFA Apex website and you can log in, and it's just going to be phenomenal. We're super excited for NAFA to give us that opportunity.
That sounds great. Kristen and Toni, once again, I'd like to thank you for sharing your insights with us today. And I'm going to turn to Ashley and ask her to share any questions we received from the audience.
right, that was a lot of good information. We only have a few questions today. What advice would you give to a woman who is considering a career in insurance or financial services?
I can start. I would say, first off, find a community that you can go talk to first. If there's a chapter of, as an example, WFS in your community, come to a meeting. We love when students come to our meetings. We'll also come to your campuses and speak to you, but talk to some other women that are engaged in the industry. We have so many successful advisors, and they're giving people. You tend to get a real giving personality and culture in our industry anyway. So be respectful, connect with them on LinkedIn if you'd like, reach out to them, find a good common time to come in and hear what they think about the industry and the difference it's made in their lives. Because I think there's no substitute for hearing directly from somebody that's been doing it a while, because they're going to have that advice for you.
Exactly.
Insights.
That's exactly right. And I think if you're be intentional too about talking to women at whatever firm that you are looking at attending, not just women in the industry as a whole. I think it's important to have a sense of connection under your own roof as well. Although we all have each other's back in this, right? But I would do that too.
That's a great point.
Excellent. And the other question that we had was, how can we attract young professionals right out of high school or college?
College? Well, let me do the college one. So I think it starts while they're in college. You know, it's no news to anyone listening. Everyone has been pushing, especially on HBCUs, you know, how do we get our industry in front of underrepresented groups early? I think it's something that you start doing sophomore, junior year. And I think that these internships need to be beyond shadow me, make copies, right? Like there should be this DEIMB component within your firm that they are being exposed to. And I think that, you know, maybe I'll make things a little uncomfortable here, but we tend to, in mentorship and internships, sometimes we match the Black advisor with the Black advisor, the Black intern with the Black advisor, right? And I think that we need to step away from that, and we need to be intentional about not tokenizing. And that's just my 2 cents.
Do we have any other questions, Ashley?
Nope, that was all we had for today.
All right. Well, thank you, Ashley. And thank you again to Kristen and Toni for educating us today. It's really a pleasure to have a dialogue with you two amazing women. And thank you for all you do for the industry. Ashley, would you please close the webinar?
Yeah, thank you everyone for your insights today, and thank you to everyone who attended. You will be receiving an email with a recording of today's webinar, and as always, keep an eye out for the next webinar in this series. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.